Hello, let's do Wordle number 955, and today's theme is board games. So I thought I'd talk about board games for a little bit. So I can't speak for other cultures or countries, but in the US, the most popular board games are actually, in my opinion, the least interesting board games for the most part. Um, in terms of like, we play them as kids and then we just stop playing board games unless we're playing them with our own kids or grandkids or whatever. Um, and that's because they're just not interesting to adults. And there are a lot of really amazing board games for adults to play, as well as ones that are kid friendly that introduce a lot more elements to them. So uh, I think it's becoming more popular these days. I think in the 90s it would have been unheard of, and then nowadays it's pretty well known, at least the common popular ones. And then in between would be a gradient, right? But I want to talk a little bit about the board games we play with our kids and then like how to progress from there instead of just stalling out and getting bored of board games. So, um, I think when you're playing with small children, most of the board games that they're going to enjoy and that you're going to play with them are essentially just games of complete chance with no strategic element. And the reason that kids like it is because they can win. If you're playing a game that requires mostly strategic elements, the kid is not going to be able to deploy strategies in the same way an adult could. And they're going to get frustrated and they're not going to be able to win and they're just going to lose and lose. Now, I have some opinion that maybe that's okay, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But I think that generally, if you just want your kids to enjoy themselves, they do enjoy the games of chance. Like, I think the one that comes to mind the most for me is Snakes and Ladders, or is it Shoots and Ladders? I think they're the same game. But in this game, as far as I can tell, you make no decisions. You literally roll and see what happens, and then the first to the end wins. So, you literally just roll and see what happens. And you can make that exciting, but it's literally a game of chance. There are games with a little bit of strategy, like Sorry. In Sorry, you roll a die, and you move that many spaces, but at sometimes you have a choice of which thing to move or whether you want to move something out of your home. And so you do have a little bit of strategic opportunity, but it is still very, very random who ends up winning because you can just get super unlucky. But there are ways to strategically give yourself an advantage. Games like Monopoly is when you start getting a little bit of strategy in there. Do you buy the property or not? But the problem with Monopoly is everyone plays with these house rules that make the game take forever and make it more a game of chance than anything else, like adding a bunch of money when you land on free parking or removing the rule that you have to auction a property if you don't decide to buy it. Things like that, which I don't even know if Monopoly is more fun with the traditional, with the rules that are in the rule booklet. But, the way that kids tend to have fun with it, we make these house rules to make it fun, and it tends to make it more random. So yeah, a lot of random elements. It's not that board games shouldn't have random elements, but I think that there should be strategic decisions every time you have a turn, and not just a random element to it. So the way you kind of graduate from that is to have decisions to make every turn in addition to the random elements. So I think the common kind of transitory board game, transitionary board game that you might play to transition into the more adult style board games is Settlers of Catan, which is still very, very popular. And in that game, there are random elements to, like, you're drawing cards and you're hoping to get the resources you want. But there's a lot of strategy in terms of how you utilize those resources and the different actions you can take on your turn. And then there's games like Carcassonne, where you do draw a random tile, but then you choose where you want to place that random tile to build up advantageous structures for yourself. And then you start getting into the more strategic games. I'm not going to go just rattle off the top of my head with no prep a bunch of board games, but I've played a ton of them. And they tend to fall into different categories. And the more strategic ones are the ones that tend to be the ones enjoyed more by adults, where there's actually less random element and more strategy. Although I think every board game is going to have some amount of random element, whether it's drawing from a deck or whether it's, rolling a die or something like that. Because without that, the game would be a solved game. But there are completely strategic games, if you think about it. I don't know, some might consider these board games, some consider them more of a different class, but games like checkers or chess or Go, things like that, where, it's full information, completely strategic. You could play the same game over and over again against another opponent who makes the same decisions, right? And if you make the same decisions, whereas I think a more traditional board game is going to have some form of dice rolling, card drawing, both, right? Some random element. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about that. I don't think I need to go much further into that. But if you haven't played like these board games for adults, you might enjoy them. Especially if you enjoy stuff like word games and puzzles and things like that. I see no reason why you wouldn't enjoy playing some of these with friends. So if you haven't, I would recommend starting with Settlers of Catan, maybe Carcassonne. There's a bunch of good ones though. And you can have a lot of fun as adults. And there was one thing I wanted to touch on, which is I think when it comes to playing strategic games, I think it's better to play against an opponent who's better than you than an opponent who's worse than you. It feels good to win every time, but you're not going to improve, and you're going to learn habits that only work against people who are worse at the game than you. So if that sounds like you, maybe try playing against people who are better than you, who aren't going easy on you. You're going to lose, and you're going to lose, and you're going to lose. But hopefully, if this person's nice, they will let you know why you lost and why your decisions weren't good, or you'll learn that on your own just from repetition, and you will get better at the game, and you'll end up enjoying it more because you're thinking about it more strategically and you're learning. So anyway, that's my experience. I like playing games against people who are better than me so that I can have a challenge and so that I can learn how to play better. So cool. Let's play the Wordle. And for the board game theme, LJ Galetta suggested I start with trade and build, which specifically they suggested it for Settlers of Catan. But I would say that that is an aspect of many, many, many board games where you are trading with other players and you are building things. And so I thought that was a really good suggestion for this kind of style of board games that I enjoy. All right, so we have an L and an E. Oh no, I'm getting flashbacks of Leggy. Why would you do this to me? Maybe it's lefty today. No, there's no T. I think I want to try an EL word if I can find one. But I'm not sure that I see one. In terms of vowels, we have an O left, and we can use Y's, I guess. It could be jelly today. What if I was one day behind? No, it can't be. I just saw that there's a yellow L there. If it was EL something Y, that might be interesting though. Okay, well, what should I do? I thought of like elect, that style word, but there's no T. Let's look at like just separating them completely, like an L at the end and an E like far away from it. I could do like OL or something. Ooh, that looks bad. I immediately rejected that OL. Maybe I shouldn't have, but let's see. I like OEL for like words like motel, but there's no T. Again, voxel. Well, we do reserve the third guess for the fun guess if there is one, and voxel is certainly fun. A voxel is a three-dimensional pixel, like pixels on your screen, but they're cubes instead of squares. All right, excuse me, there's an X. All right, well, it's Excel then. Wow, it's not Excel, it's expel. Please don't lose. Okay. Expel in 5. All right. When the X turned yellow. What? What? I was going to say it's a bad guess because it includes the X, but apparently not. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think of Excel or Expel as even options, but voxel was great. Okay. Cool. Well, let's have we had Excel before? I want to say we have, but I don't remember. Again, we've had 956 words technically because Wordle started at 0 with cigar. I haven't played all 956. I've probably played like 800-ish games. Let's see. What does this say? This says I've played 746 games. I tend to believe that. But yeah, remembering all 956 words is just not going to happen. Anyway, let's spin the wheel of themes here. What do we get? Everybody Loves Raymond, the TV show, suggested by Kiki Kohler. 6249. So 2 words related to the TV show Everybody Loves Raymond. And of course, if you enjoyed this, why not leave a like, subscribe, and a kind comment below.